All right, my friends, in this video, we're going to start talking about the next couple of topics that we're going to cover in React and the application we're going to build to better understand those topics. So let's get to it. I first want to begin by telling you about a couple things we still need to figure out around the world of React. First off, we still don't have a lot of experience handling user events, like a user clicking on something or typing on something or dragging something around on the screen. So one of the big focuses that we're going to have on the application that we're going to build is how to react or deal with user events. Next up, throughout all the applications we've put together so far, we've been making use of either static data or randomly generated data. But in a real React application, we very, very frequently need to attempt to fetch some data from some outside API or from some server and pull data out of some database. So we're going to have a big focus on learning how we can correctly fetch data inside of a React application. And then finally, this is kind of a very basic thing to understand as well, how are we going to show a list of records? So far, we haven't really been building any lists of data. We've been just showing kind of individual elements one at a time, but we haven't been rendering a list. At its absolute core, just about every web application that you're ever going to work on at some point in time is going to need to show a list of data. And I would be kind of hard-pressed to think of just about any web app, any very popular web app, that doesn't show a list of records. So we're going to get a really good idea of how to show a list of records. All right, so with these kind of goals or these topics in mind, user events, fetching data, and showing lists, let's take a quick peek at a mock-up of the application we're going to build. All right, so we're going to split the implementation of the project we're going to work on into two separate kind of implementations, I guess. We're going to build it up to one certain point, and then we're going to kind of take a break right there, and then go for a second jump into it and develop it a little bit further. So for the initial implementation of the app that we're going to work on, it's going to be a pretty simple and straightforward app, but it will be pretty fun and interesting, trust me. So you can't really tell what's going on from just the mock-up here. Essentially what we want to do is show a text input at the very top center of the screen. A user should then be able to type in some text here. So like they should be able to type in cars or plants, flowers, or buildings, any term you could possibly imagine. After they type in that term and then press enter, we are going to do a search or a request to an outside API that is going to find images, or basically just simple pictures that match whatever term that user just entered. So if a user enters in cars and then presses enter, I would want to somehow get a list of images of cars and show them on the screen to the user. So that's pretty much it for the V1 implementation. We're going to get all these different images that we're going to find and then just show them one at a time going down the screen. Not a lot of styling, just kind of want to get stuff up there and focus on handling user typing something in, handling showing a list of data, and handling somehow searching for images. Okay, so that's V1. Let's now talk about V2. So like I said, the V2 version of this app is going to be a little bit more complicated, and that's why we're going to break it into like two separate distinct phases. So in the V2 implementation, we're going to do all the same stuff. We're going to build off the same project. We're still going to be having a user type in a search term, fetching a list of images, and then showing them on the screen. But the difference is going to be how we show these images to the user. In V1, we were just listing them straight down, and chances are the user would have to continue scrolling to see all the images we fetch. In the V2 implementation, I want to kind of tile the images across the screen. Remember that in general, images tend to not be identical sizes. They very frequently tend to be very different in sizes, different heights, different widths. So I want to figure out some really clever way in which we can make sure that we have these different sized images inside of here and still kind of tile them to all line up very nicely. So that's going to be the V2 portion. This V2 portion is going to be a little bit more on the CSS and styling side, but don't worry, it's still going to have a lot of React-specific topics, and you're going to get a better idea of how to integrate React with non-React code, essentially. All right, so that's the idea. Now before we take a pause, let's generate a new application to house our code for this project. So I stopped my seasons project by hitting Control-C. I'll then go up one directory to my workspace folder, and back over here, I'm going to use create React app to generate my new project. And I'm going to call this thing simply Pix, like so. Okay, so that's going to install stuff. So let's take a quick pause right here. We'll come back to the next section and start working on this project.